Good Wednesday afternoon, everybody. It's Jim, it's Amadeus, and we are here. And we're here to talk all kinds of fun stuff. It's Soccer Wednesday, Amadeus. Why don't you bring us up to speed on what's going on?
Yeah, it's a big Major League Wednesday. Obviously we got the Euro Cup going on. We
Mhm.
just had two matches finish. The ones this morning, Croatia and Albania drew 2-2, and then Germany just beat Hungary 2-0 in the noon match. Later today, we're gonna have Scotland and Switzerland. Scotland and Switzerland to finish off the day. But yeah, we got lots of action on the pitch tonight. There's a full MLS slate going on in the United States. We have some Brazilian soccer because they're taking a page from the MLS books during these international tournaments. And, tomorrow is the start of Copa America with Canada and Argentina kicking us off. So definitely it's a packed day, not just with the Euro Cup.
Well, and I think that the key here is I think that and go on is that seeing um, that we're seeing people engaged in soccer all day long from a standpoint of maybe they're at work, but they've got off to the side, maybe on their phone or whatever. They're listening or watching to the Euros, and then they go home and catch up on the MLS. So it's becoming a very entertaining uh, situation for soccer fans.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, it's a full slate tonight. So
Mhm.
whoever your team may be, there's probably just one team that's not playing this week. But yeah, there's
Mhm.
there's definitely everybody's playing tonight pretty much.
There you go. Let's what we've talked about this a couple times. I there's teams that have done well that we thought would do well. Then there's three. Then we have a situation where there's teams that we didn't see coming up but have done well, which is, I mean, that's basically what happens in pretty much all sports. Is you undervalue one team and then all of a sudden you know and overvalue another. And certainly, I think that's happening quite a bit in the MLS this year.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen Inter Miami. They're one team that when they were going for the Champions Cup, they weren't in the best form, right? And even though they got
Hmm.
off to that early start, they started to fall out of form. But now, they seem to be back in form. They're at the top of the table there. And, right behind them at the top of the table is Cincinnati as well. Cincinnati is one of those teams where, they won the Supporter Shield last year. We're one of the best teams in the MLS. And this year they got off to that slow start as well because, they were also in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. And usually that's more of a desirable competition for these teams. And it's not just, here, obviously, all across the world. In Europe, we see teams. I've seen, one year Espanyol threw their season in La Liga and ended up getting relegated just to try and make a run in Europa League. So we see it all the time. Those are the ones they want to win. But now that the Champions Cup is over, Cincinnati's really started to make a rebound. They're a team that's gotten into good form as well, and all of a sudden they're right behind Miami. And yeah, there's been quite a few surprises for sure in the MLS table this year.
Yeah, and I think that it's good, frankly, for soccer when there are those surprises, because then you can begin to look out and realize that maybe, just maybe, my team, whoever that team may be, um, is really got a chance here.
Yeah, and you never really know with the MLS because if you look at some of these teams, New York City FC is a great
Hmm.
example. This was one of the worst teams in the league last year. Finished in the bottom five of the table. Got off to an awful start again this year. Lost their first couple of matches. It looked like they were going to be at the foot of the table again, and now all of a sudden they've gotten hot. They've won quite a bit of games, and now they're sitting fourth in the Eastern Conference with 9 wins. And another team like that from the West is Colorado, again, another team that was at the foot of the table all year, one of the worst in the MLS. And this year, they're not having a great season, 7-4-7, but they're not having a bad season either. And they're right now they're in sixth in the Western Conference. So, if playoffs were today, they're making it. So definitely anything can happen. And even last year, we saw with Inter Miami, one of the worst teams in the MLS. As soon as Messi got there, he turned them around. They went on. I think they won the U.S. Open Cup, or they made a run in it at least. And
right, they made a run.
Yeah. I think they went to the final and lost, or the semifinal, something like that. But they did win the Leagues Cup, that new tournament that with the Mexican clubs, and they're even thinking about adding some of the Central American clubs as well, which I think would be good for the competition. But yeah, and they almost they didn't make the playoffs, but they almost snuck into that ninth, wild card spot. So they definitely had a chance there. So anything can happen. It's a long season, and especially the way the MLS works, where basically, 9 of the 14, 15 teams in each side of the table is going to make it. Yeah, anything can happen.
Well, and I think that it's funny. I've spoken to a bunch of families who have kids who are soccer fans. So, they're growing up, they're watching the games on Saturday morning. And when they go to, when the families take them to a soccer game, an MLS game, I ask them, what's going on? And they go, look, all we hope is it's competitive. It doesn't, if our team loses, that's okay. But as long as it's a fun and tightly played game, that's all we ever want. And so I guess what I'm saying is the expectations of the average MLS fan is not as much give me a win, give me a loss, but give me competitive soccer. And you just mentioned that's what's going on right now.
Yeah, especially in the Eastern Conference. Like, if you look at it right now, you got New England in last place, in 15th for the Eastern Conference, 5-1-10. Already 10 losses in 16 matches. It looks terrible, but they got 16 points, and the team in 9th place, Nashville, has 20 points. So as bad as New England has been, they're 4 points out of a potential wild card spot right now.
Yeah, and that's again, all you can ask for, right? Is be competitive, be entertaining, and what more can you want, right?
Exactly, and you got to be realistic. You're not going to win the Supporter Shield, but if you sneak into the playoffs, you never know. Anybody could get hot, go on a run, and win the MLS Cup.
Right, and it's it's a situation where I think that generationally, that kids today benefit from the fact that they can watch soccer, and maybe they may not want to. They may stick to soccer and try not necessarily go to basketball or potentially to football or whatever, because I think that's the thing. The growth of the sport is not on the youth side, okay? And when I say on the youth, I'm talking about under 15 or so. It's what do they do when they go to college? Do they play the game, or do they play another game? And back in the day, it was kids would play soccer, and enjoy it, but end up on the basketball team, or end up playing wide receiver or defensive back on the football team. But when we start getting more competitive from the top flight athletes that we have in the country, and the same could be said for Canada. I mean, there's the top flight athletes look for where can I go to get the money, and right now it's not the MLS, but it certainly would be an entertaining opportunity to be to get to that point.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring Canada up, because Canada, a lot of the time, our players go to the United States for whatever sport it may be, basketball, not so much hockey, because we have a lot of our own scouts. They come from the OHL and the AHL. But yeah, a lot of these other sports that are American dominated, football, basketball, you're going to go to a college or a university in the States. It's just that's where you're going to get noticed. You're not going to get noticed up here. And really, though, you've seen the same thing from Americans with soccer. So for the longest time, USA, Canada wasn't a great team, really wasn't competitive at the international level. over the last 10, 20 years, the game has been growing. But what you're
Right.
seeing, this specific generation, this team that made the last World Cup and is in this Copa America, obviously both Canada and the USA. What you're seeing is a lot of their players that are starting on this starting 11. They are very good players, but they were playing overseas. And that's just how the growth of the game. It's growing here, and it's grown to the point where now, yes, you have a competitive team. You had to send those players overseas to turn them into a competitive team. But over time, that will grow the game on this part of the world. And, maybe one day, 10 years from now, you don't need to send a player across seas because as they're growing up, the MLS has the proper ranks for them to come up and get noticed and get that, become the star they can be. So,
Right.
yeah, that's just the way it's heading right now. Right now, it's if you want to be good and have a chance at making, the U.S. national team, the Canadian national team, you have to go overseas and play for a Juventus or something like that, somewhere in England, Germany, one of these teams, as you see a lot of these players doing. But it's growing the game. The team's getting more competitive. They're learning how to play those. And then maybe when the next generation comes up, as these players are leaving the game, on the later end of 30 and getting ready to retire, they have that knowledge from playing overseas and in the more competitive European leagues that they bring down. They can pass that knowledge on to the youth of the team, and that's how the sport grows on this side of the world.
Well, the other thing too, and you brought this up before, and that's what you talk about the Brazilian teams, right? Where they take and nurture the young players, and then they sell them off to the big, the big teams in Europe, right? That wouldn't necessarily be a bad next step for the United States, no?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's what you're seeing right now. Like obviously everybody's talking about Endrick, who's going to make he's going to be on the Brazilian national team in Copa America, but he's going to be on Real Madrid next season as well. But now that he's 18, but he's been playing for Palmeiras. That's where he made his name, and that's how these Brazilian clubs work. They run it like a business. Whereas we develop you. We try to get the best out of you at your young age for those 2 years before you turn 18. Really, we sell you off for a large amount of money to one of these Real Madrids or Barcelonas or something that's going to come along and develop you further. And then they use that money to reinvest back into the squad. And now you go maybe find a player as a replacement, or you search the young ranks again, and maybe you find a 14-year-old and say, okay, this is someone to keep an eye on. Maybe we give them a shot to play for the big leagues. So definitely something the MLS should consider for sure.
Well, and I think that the good news that would be you're basically saying, okay, you could do a contract where they play 4 years or 5 years in England, but they have to come back to the club eventually.
Yeah.
And so then you're guaranteeing that you will create a superstar that is not going to end up playing for you.
Yeah, and there are things like that, right? Like you can loan players out in soccer. That's something you don't really
actually. I'm glad you brought that because that's what I was thinking. I couldn't remember it.
And that's what you do, right? You loan out a player, and you don't put an opt-in for the team to buy him at the end of the loan. Yeah, and that's how you get that contract out of it.
That would be cool.
Yeah, 100%. We see it all the time, right? We see a player gets loaned for 2-3 years to a team just so because the player was young. Like Barcelona, for example, was already thinking about they haven't even had Vitor Roque for less than a year, and they're already thinking about he played a few games for them this last season, and they're already thinking about loaning him out next year so he can develop on maybe another team where the competition is still good, but it's not like La Liga, because obviously they felt he struggled a bit in his performance there. But Barcelona, they got that young kid playing for Spain right now. So Barcelona's a team that's really farming a lot of they're trying to farm a lot of these kids, find them and just bring them in and develop them.
Does it make any sense? I'm throwing this out there from a soccer standpoint. Would it make any sense to for the MLS to create academies, or is playing college soccer, sufficient? Or you could keep them both, actually.
So yeah, that's the problem, right? Academies I think academies are the way to go, but it's hard with the MLS because of the way it's structured with the colleges and the draft, right? Not a lot of other teams have a draft, and so this would be something, right? Like if Philadelphia, for example, wanted to open up an academy, the Union,
right,
and they opened it up to any kids in the area that want to play, right? And they grow up and they play for the Philadelphia Union Academy. Well, that's something that the MLS, they don't have control over that the way that academy's Philadelphia's, and they can do whatever they want with those players. Right. They can call them up, play for our team. We could sell the player off to another team if we want to, right? And so I think by doing that, by opening the academies, it would kill the draft and the players coming out of college. And that's why I think they avoid doing that, because you could essentially start your own academy and you could be developing a player since they were 8 years old. And that's going to be, this team, we got a team of superstars here at 8 years old, and we're going to develop them. And we're going to, 10 years from now, this is going to be the team, right? Well, then that's a team that doesn't need to draft anybody. If every team in the MLS is doing this, then all of a sudden the value of the draft goes down. And obviously there's no point in even going to college to play soccer because you're not going to get noticed. You should have been enrolled in one of these academies and playing for a specific team for 10 years. So it's tough in the MLS specifically, the way the league is structured right now.
What if, okay, I've got another thought. IMG in Bradenton has an academy, okay, where you can play football, you can play basketball, they've got all the major sports at the academy in Bradenton. They built, in essence, a private school, okay? It's a private, high school. You can come to IMG Academy from anywhere in the world and play, but you have to enroll in the school. Okay. So they are a recognized team in the state of Florida as a high school team. They play against all other high school teams in the state of Florida. Okay. Regardless of the fact that most of the kids that are in there don't even come from the state of Florida. Then they participate in the championships. Why wouldn't they, if IMG or somebody who has this kind of money puts up a collegiate academy, would that work?
Well, and then have that play against other colleges, right? Yeah, you definitely could do that. See, I already see a bit of a problem. I'm surprised they're allowing that, just because I think it's a bit of a competitive advantage for IMG doing that, and then competing against, because high schools, obviously, if you're really taking sports seriously from that young of an age, you're looking for the best high school, and maybe that they go on to good colleges and things like that, and then get drafted, but at the same time, if you don't have that luxury and you're just going to the local high school or whatever it be, it seems just as a bit of a competitive disadvantage for some of these schools that are maybe putting together a team based off the players that they have going there. Whereas this one is bringing in, people, kids from out of state and things like that. But I mean, if it's already being allowed down there, it could definitely work at the collegiate level. I see no problem if this is something that's getting away at the high school level. That's a great idea. We just gave IMG an idea, right? Give us a call. Yeah. We're the ideas people.
Yeah, they're also my agents, so I can call them. But I mean, these academies, By the way, for the record, IMG has never won a Florida State championship in any
Okay,
sport.
so
Okay. Now they've been in championship games, but they just can't get over that hump with the quality of play that some of these high schools. Um, but this is done a lot though in this country in basketball. Let's set aside IMG. There are academies where you go and play. Kevin Durant was in D.C., went and played for an academy in Virginia, who recruited him there to play basketball. Now the academy was a school, a bona fide school. So I mean, they exist. I just don't see why they couldn't be funded, or the school couldn't be funded by, an IMG, a CMA, or for that matter, some university that wants to, to work in that regard. These guys were NIL before there was NIL.
yeah, well, definitely with the way the sport is evolving and has been, all sports and general collegiate sports have been evolving over the last few years. This might be the future then, right? This might be just something that maybe, it doesn't have a lot of steam right now, but as we continue to go down this, NIL hole that we're going down and things like that, we could end up being that. Why are we even including colleges? Let's just open academies. If you're a professional athlete, we'll start, almost like Olympic training, right, for some of these other niche sports. So, yeah, you just go to the academy, whatever. We'll set you up with, private teacher, whatever. You do your studies there. So that, who knows, that could be the future, because sports are definitely changing at the collegiate level for sure.
Right, and if we've carried out one point further, right? If they did that, now if they had already, I'm sorry, if colleges had already done that with college football, there would be no reason to be arguing about what conference you play in. You could be anywhere and play. It doesn't matter. I mean, if it was maybe let's say you set up regional teams, and this is, but you wouldn't have to change conferences. And I think they would have ended up, frankly, with a bigger payday. They could have offloaded the sport. In other words, football would be different. It would be away from the actual school, from the standpoint of they'd be run like a business, as opposed to run like a college, which screws up the business.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like you could have, the Ohio State Football Academy or whatever, so it's still run by the school, it's funded by the school,
right.
But then that way, they already want to kind of be treated like its own separate entity and not have to follow some certain rules. So yeah, then you could circumvent all of that and just go do your own thing doing that, and convince a bunch of the larger college and universities, just open up your own academy. Let's start doing it. You got and it doesn't have to be a specific academy, right? Just have a sports academy, and then do, if you're taking basketball seriously, you got it's the basketball academy, it's the tennis academy, it's all in one. And if you're a professional athlete, you're just going there, and then then the campuses would be left for obviously just regular studies and the the other degrees that you're working on as well. Obviously, these athletes are getting degrees, but if you're going to put them in this situation where they're trying to be professional athletes, then I guess it kind of makes sense where you would take them out of that environment and let them, give them tutors, things like that. But it's interesting. This could be the future. It's an interesting concept for sure.
Yeah, and I think that it would take away a lot of the grief that that we're seeing now. I've also talked to guys about the fact, and it's something that you and I have spoken about too. And when we were talking about putting this type of thing together, this type of league together, we said if you had, let's say, 40 teams in this elite league, but the bottom 5 or 10 could be relegated, so that the teams that are playing football and could be elevated to take those places, What an amazing situation that would be.
Yeah, I'm always for the promotion and the relegation. So
Right.
maybe that's what needs to be done, right? Because then that way it's earn your spot if you want to be a top
Yeah.
academy, right? It
Mhm.
doesn't really matter the name of the school that's attached to it. You got to show it on the field.
Well, to take that one step further, Brett Yermark, who is the commissioner of the Big 12, is exploring, they haven't done it yet, but they're exploring the possibility of having a national sponsor of the conference. So, in other words, it wouldn't be known as the Big 12 Conference anymore. It could very well be known as the General Motors Big 12 Conference.
Yeah,
And
I
they
mean,
would pay
you see it
they
all the
would pay
time.
up to $50 million for naming rights of the conference. And each school would get money from that conference. I mean, from that deal. It's an
Yeah,
interesting way of thinking about it. I got to say
yeah.
that.
And that's it's again another soccer thing, right? Like
Yeah,
obviously, Ligue 1 was Uber Eats Ligue 1 this
right.
last season. Now it's going to be McDonald's, I believe. But yeah, there's a lot of these smaller, like the Bulgarian league is EVBET,
Yeah,
the EVBET league. So definitely, for a long time, the English Premier League was the Barclays Premier League.
yeah, yeah.
Sponsored by Barclays, and obviously they dropped that sponsorship years ago. But for the longest time that I can remember growing up, it was always the BPL to me. So yeah, absolutely, it's big in soccer. You definitely see a lot of these leagues. I think even the Brasileirão had one next to it last year, but yeah, even these leagues in Argentina, the Liga de Profesional, when were doing the Copa de la Liga, it was the Copa Sur Finanzas. So they find a sponsor and you attach it to. So good on Brett Yormark doing that. I mean, that's definitely gonna help put money in the pockets of some of these teams that were kind of forced to leave their conference, and then the Big 12 was kind of left for football, at least a little watered down. Still going to be one of the best basketball conferences, though. So
Yeah,
silver lining there.
yeah. Small, but nevertheless, a silver lining. Uh, but yeah, I think the most entertaining part of that would be that you've got some pretty cool you got some pretty cool stuff going with the league, and it just makes sense to go ahead and do that. And that's the old joke that if it makes too much sense, no one will ever do it. So that's where they are at the moment. But I do think that being creative is the best way to go.
Yeah, 100%. I think, like I said, the way that the sports seem to be evolving at the collegiate level with these NIL deals, we got unions now and things like that. It's going to continue to evolve. So things like that might be the future of the sport. Getting a sponsor, like hell, the bowl games always have a sponsor beside it.
Yeah.
So why not throw one beside the conference? They have TV deals and things like that. So that it totally makes sense in my eyes.
Well, the other thing is in Major League Sports, right? But it doesn't matter where what the sport is. The stadium has a name, a naming rights deal.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you're
Right.
walking into a stadium that, for all intents and purposes, is the corporate stadium.
Yeah, and sometimes when the name is changed, people won't go to the new name, right? Like obviously Heinz Field being
I was thinking the same thing as you.
yeah, and for me, Toronto's still the Air Canada Center. The same way for my parents, it's
Right.
still the Maple Leaf Garden. So
That's
that's
right.
that's
That's right.
the yeah.
We have a sportscaster here in I'm sorry, weatherman here in the Baltimore, Washington area that refuses to call um, where the Ravens play M&T Bank Stadium. He refuses to call it M&T Bank. He calls it the Russell Street Coliseum because it's on Russell Street in Baltimore. So he just says, yeah, when the Ravens are playing at the Russell Street Coliseum, and I remember a couple of guys going, "The hell is the Russell Street Coliseum at?" I said, "It's where M&T Bank is. It's on Russell Street." Um, so yeah, they basically are, you know, are sitting there going, okay, you don't want to call me that name, and I mean, I know Billy Hillgrove, and I go back decades. Um, and Hillgrove, the voice of the Steelers, to this day, it took him almost 7 games to go through the first season that they changed the name of the stadium to actually get the name right. And he's contractually obligated to actually say it, uh, but he couldn't remember it because it had been
Yeah, well,
Heinz for so long. And then there is still the Heinz Ketchup Red Zone for that. So it's kind of like, okay, well, are we Heinz or are we the was it Adventure? I can't even
yeah,
remember the
it's
name.
Acrisure, and that's the best part is like it's an insurance company from Michigan. It's not even in Pennsylvania, so yeah,
Uh,
Acrisure Stadium.
yeah, good luck with that.
But
Yeah,
yeah, we see this slip ups like that all the time. Even with all the teams that have been getting renamed recently too. There's slip ups there because that's the
right.
thing when you've been calling a team one name for 20 plus years, it's
Yeah,
hard to change, right?
it's impossible. I mean, you have a generation of people that know it is one thing, and then you want to change it, and then you expect them to remember it or care about it.
Yeah. So
I mean,
yeah, and even like look at like Twitter and X, right? So that's another example. Like half the people are never going to call this thing X. It's always going to be Twitter, and I believe it's still Twitter.com as well.
it is. And they're
Yeah.
trying the Elon Musk theory of the case is that he doesn't mind that people still call it Twitter, but it's most places will. I know um, when we use Twitter X as a source, right, where you grab a clip and pop it into your stories, right? Um, they say they meaning the Associated Press because that's the rules everybody goes by. Uh, they say, fairly or not, that you need to call it when you're giving attribution to it. You need to call it X, formerly known as Twitter. You can just say X if you want, but for those who can't remember that X was Twitter, there you go. You get what
It's
you
like
what you do.
Prince.
Exactly.
Throw.
Formerly known as as X. So it's crazy, but it is what it is, right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we've come to a point in the game here where it's time for you to showcase what's going on for you and your fans. Checking out, of course, the show box down there, which they should be doing every day. What you got for us today, bud?
Yeah, well, make sure you check out my premium picks at bigal.com, pickadvisor.com, and theinsidersroom.com. The links are in the description below. I had a nice 2-0-1 day in the Euro Cup yesterday, so looking to continue that into today. I do have 2 plays on this 3 o'clock match. If you want to know the side and the total that I'm on, you can go grab that. That's the Scotland-Switzerland match. So make sure you check that out. I also have a lot of action on the pitch in general tonight. I have my MLS Eastern Conference game of the month that you can grab. I have 2 plays on the pitch in Brazil. And I also have a baseball play for later tonight. I believe 2 of my plays have already gone for baseball. But yeah, make sure you check out that action as well.
Okay. All right. We would be remiss if we didn't take a second and honor one of the greatest players of all time, and that, of course, is the passing of Willie Mays. Willie played for the New York Giants, then obviously went out west to play for the San Francisco Giants, and came back to New York in the latter part of his career to play for a year or so with the Mets before becoming a coaching and then an advisor to the Mets. It's hard to quantify, frankly, in today what Willie Mays was to baseball at the time in the 50s and 60s. I don't think it would be a stretch to say that Willie Mays, if we're going to equate him to somebody, Willie Mays was the Michael Jordan of baseball. He could do. He was, we talk about five-tool players. People can run, throw, make spectacular catches and hit. Willie Mays hit 600 home runs. Okay, not a bad situation from that standpoint. Had a lifetime batting average over 300, and won 16 Golden Gloves. Which is funny because here's the reason I say it's funny. He was in the league 6 years before the Golden Glove award actually was established. So, far and away, he and Brooks Robinson had the greatest, Golden Glove collection of anybody. But if you think about it, there's that famous clip that they've been playing on television all day long about that, run the World Series catch where he's running at the wall at the Polo Grounds in New York and making the over his shoulder catch where he made the basket catch, right? What people may not know about the Polo Grounds, it was not symmetrical. So it wasn't like 335 down one line, 335 down the other line, and somewhere between 400 and 410 in center, which is what we see mainly in baseball parks these days. It was 325 down the left field line. Get this, short porch. Talk about short porch. It was 300 feet down, if you could pull it, down the right field line. But here's the kicker. It was 461 to center field. So if you watch that video, the film, of Willie Mays making that catch, he caught that ball at about the 410 mark of center field.
Yeah, that's large.
It was so big, center field in Polo Grounds, and also in Forbes Field in Pittsburgh, that they parked the batting cage in center field because they didn't think anybody could hit it. Now, obviously for World Series, they took it out, but Mays caught that ball over his shoulder at about 410 feet away from home plate, and then turned, as you can see in the video, turned and threw the ball into the second baseman within seconds after he caught it. So, the Say Hey Kid was pretty amazing. I got to see him as a kid playing San Francisco Giants with Barry Bonds, Orlando Cepeda, Juan Marichal, and some of the Giants greats. He played in a stadium, Candlestick Park in San Francisco, before they built the bowl part of it there. And you'll also see a great catch that he makes with Barry Bonds. They almost killed each other. They hit a fence together at the same time. And if you look out there, you'll see that before that center field bleacher was there for the 49ers, you could literally see Candlestick Point is literally right on the water, and it's got a perfect view of the naval facilities in San Francisco. So you would look out as you looked out the center field, you could literally see battleships and aircraft carriers and these amazing ships that were in harbor at San Francisco. If you figure that Willie Mays played in that stadium where the wind is blowing in from off the water, Lord knows how many home runs he actually could have hit if he didn't play in that ballpark. So anyway, to wrap it, put a button on this one. He was one of a kind, probably the greatest player, all-round player certainly in National League history, perhaps even Major League history of his age. And we will miss the Say Hey Kid. He was a phenomenal person and a phenomenal player, and we just wish he and his family, nothing but great memories of Willie today on this Juneteenth day, which ironically, there will be a game played in Birmingham. It's the Juneteenth game, where the game will be played in honor to Major League teams will be playing there. in honor of Willie in Birmingham. He would obviously was meant to be there, but unfortunately couldn't make it. So it's a good day to go on YouTube and check out some of Willie Mays stuff, because once you see it, you'll see what a special athlete he was in the 50s and 60s, when it wasn't easy to be an athlete in the 50s and 60s and be black. So good on Willie, and we wish you well, my friend. So there you go. Willie Mays say he had 93 years old, passing last night. All right, so we shall be back on Thursday. We'll have plenty to talk about, and you'll be able to cash all your tickets with Amadeus. Talk about that if you like. And we'll see you on Thursday, everybody. Take care. Bye.